Hello, welcome back. Protracking with Syphus. There will be some protracking tonight. There'll be some other things as well. There'll be a lot of me trying to remember how to use OBS, how to stream, trying to remember how I managed to get this MacBook to handle everything without melting. So I'm gonna get out of this personal paint. And I'm going to play some tunes for a little while, which is a habit. It's not a habit yet. I did it last time. I'd like it to become a habit. I think it's a good way to set the mood. And I mean, let's have some house. Oh, there's some good tunes in here. Lots of good tunes. Lots of good Scope tunes. Scope, my group mate in Uprough. Let's fire a few of those on. I like that one. I should add the whole directory, but I'll do it in order. Let's get some substance on. All right, okay. Have a few tunes while I get myself sorted out. Is that coming through? No, it's not, is it? Ooh, we're getting that now? How about now? It's now, good stuff. Also, I'd appreciate any feedback anybody has on how my sidechain is working. Is my voice completely ruining the music? Doesn't matter that much if it is, that's the whole point. But I'll try and keep quiet while the music's playing. Cheers. I missed Huffman yesterday. I'm going to catch up on that. Hey. Yeah, okay. Meta's got a bit crazy. Okay. Bad producer, hey there. was going to Messiah mod my C64. I was wondering, do you know any UK component distributors? So I'm way out of date on what's happening with C64. I have a Messiah cart somewhere for my C64C. That's the one with Messiah and the MIDI input, and it gives you a sort of TB303 SID interface, is that right? Yeah, okay. So I'm not sure what the mod is that you're talking about, or what kind of components are involved. Do you mean adapting? Oh, the SID to SID, is that the dual SID chips? I don't know who's selling, yeah, okay, I don't know who's selling components. I'm trying to remember how much of a custom job it is. I don't think there's much to it. As far as I remember, it's, oh god, I'm a bad person to be giving out advice on C64 hardware. I'm trying to think of who I know who would go to Eddie. Anders would know what you have to do to get that up and running. Zabi Tom, I'm not sure if he works off hardware now. And he's big on Goat Tracker. He might be a good person to ask. I'm pretty sure he was running dual SIDs. Dual 8510s. Yeah, I don't take any hardware advice, especially any C64 hardware advice from me, because you'll blow up a SID chip and that'll be a sad thing. I've blown up a few SID chips in my time. Yeah, Zabi Tom, I will be talking about Zabi Tom at some point in Protracking with Syphus. He, as well as being a friend, is one of my favorite musicians, one of the best chip musicians in the last 20 years, in my opinion. And he's doing all sorts of awesome hardware, live stuff these days. We'll get to him at some point when we veer into PC territory, into fast tracker territory, and maybe SID territory. But he might be a good person to ask about that if you've got a line on him. So, aye, good. Let me just scroll up and see. Art state. I haven't fired the Uprough mix disc yet. Oh yeah. I keep saying that I'll fire it up on the stream one day, and I will one day. I'm not very prepared for tonight, as you might have realized, but I just had to stream. I had to get something done. It's been weeks. I got a chest infection, lost my voice, then my router broke and I had to wait to get a replacement, and then just one car crash after another, but not an actual car crash. My car broke, but not a crash, just something went wrong, brakes or something, but hey, it's all good. Also, this is not deliberate. This is just what my hair does when I sleep on it. And yeah, this is Demo Scene Central up in here because I spent all of last night reflashing floppy USB adapters, which are just broken for no reason. That's got flash floppy on now. My Finnish barista has been home to Finland on holiday and brought me back some of this business, which, if you're into salty licorice, you'll recognize as being the shit. She brought me something else she didn't even tell me the name of. It was a different kind of salty licorice chili pepper thing. She just gave me like giving me strict conditions on how and where to eat it. It was amazing. Yeah, and I've been doing a bit of programming. I guess you can call it programming. We'll talk about that tonight. We'll talk about AmigaPal again because that's had a huge number of updates, and hopefully it's even better than it was for sample prep for converting samples in bulk or even just singly to transfer over to Amiga hardware. And tonight will hopefully be a first, if this works, in that I'll be able to switch scenes between desktop view of AmigaPal and the Amiga hardware. It'd be nice to be able to go between them so I can demonstrate some of what I've been talking about over the past few weeks. Am I going to hit up any UK chip gigs this year? It's been a long time since I hit up a chip gig. It's been a long time since I went to a chip gig which I wasn't performing at, which is shameful. But it's been a long time since I've been to any gig because I'm deeply tragic and have 2 kids and a wife who works weird shift patterns, and it's rare I get out of an evening. Having said that, I'm going to make more of an effort. If anything cool's happening and it's not too far away, then yeah, I'll start to do that. Yep. I think the last chip gig was when I played. That was it. You and Lynn, who's a good friend of mine, and Joe Loudon. They're great chip musicians, chip punk musicians, and it's worth checking out their stuff. Ewan's done a lot more over the last couple of years. I've mastered a few of his tapes. And they dragged me out of retirement a few years ago to play a gig in the basement of the comic shop they worked at in Newcastle, which was cool. I mean, they had me at basement, comic shop, even better. And then an audience, that's a bonus, you know. I'd have done it to one person and a dog quite happily. That's always been my way. And yeah, it was good crack. I used some software that I wrote years ago that I might talk about tonight because it's kind of relevant. I used that to whip up a little game that I had projected on the screen behind me that was beat synced to the music. And I thought, well, if I'm doing that, I might as well put a joystick out for the audience to come and play along if they want. So it was like, it was a sort of random height extrusion infinite landscape with kind of low points were sea, mid points were green, and then the top points were white snow, and then you had a spaceship that you could control and it always flew over the mountains and you could go from side to side. That was about it, but hey, I did it in a day. And yeah, some people came up and in lieu of dancing, which it's rare that my music moves people to dance, but they came up and had a go, and hey, it passes the time while you're watching some guy check his emails on an Amiga, which is, if you're not holding a Game Boy and jumping around, oh, I had a guitar, that's something to look at, I guess. So yeah, I'm just ruining some good tunes here, but that's okay. I'm gonna let these 3 play out and then I'll get going properly. Disgusting fake chip, so I'm worried about a bad response. Bad producer says he's playing a few gigs this year, he or she, I'm not sure. Hi there, however you want to be identified. That's ridiculous. I'm not he. Okay, that's cool. I'm not somebody who's tied to gendered pronouns, but let's go with it. I'm playing a few chip gigs this year, but I write disgusting fake chip, so I'm worried about a bad response. There's no such thing as fake chip. All chip is fake, and I'll probably come back to this on every episode. Chip tune as a term, just the linguistics of it, just the terminology, originated as a way of describing tunes that were made with samples reminiscent of SID music. So chiptune has never been just about something that's made on a chip with a chip or synthesized by a chip or anything like that. Nobody was calling C64 music chip music until a few people in the very late 90s started writing music on the Amiga that was supposed to be reminiscent of C64 music, and they would call those chip tunes. And then gradually people started to use that term to apply it to everything. That's great. No, you didn't. You didn't start a fake debate. Hi, Scott Scratch. Hi. I've got some things for you actually. When I get a chance to get to the post box, I'm going to send you some snacks. I'll explain that in a bit. Yeah, no, you haven't started a fake debate. This is me doing my my rant that nobody ever asks for, which is supposed to be quite inclusive and positive, and it basically goes like this. Nothing's fake and everything's fake. If you like what you hear, great. If you don't, you can get fucked. If you tell somebody that they're not doing chip music because it didn't come from a sound chip, you're a terrible gatekeeper person and you've got to shut up. And fortunately, nobody listens to those people because people would rather listen to music wherever the hell it came from. I professionally have written music that you might call fake bit. I mean, I've sampled C64s and all sorts of bits and pieces. I've put it all together in Ableton and I produced it and it's been released as part of a game. And yeah, it's fake bit by anybody's stupid standards, but I don't mind calling it chip music, and I'll fight anyone who's got a problem with that. Or don't call it chip, I don't care what you call it. But I really would hate to think that people were, okay, everybody has imposter syndrome about something. I've got imposter syndrome about a bunch of stuff. I'll talk about some of that tonight because some of it is the way I have been programming on the Amiga. But yeah, forget the language, because in most genres of music, and especially in this context, language is the tool of embittered gatekeepers who want to stop usually younger people or people of, you know, let's face it, it's usually neckbeard men getting annoyed that younger people and female people or non-cis male people are coming into their space and doing their thing. This is something that that's a problem in games and all over the place, but all these fights have been had on chip forums for the last 10-20 years, and those people melt away eventually because nobody's listening to them because people are busy writing music. And I used to be a bit of an asshole about chip music and terminology and history, and that's just because I was interested in that, and I was more of a dick in my 20s. But hey, yeah, so that's a very long and rambling way of saying don't think of what you make as fake bit unless you want to describe it as that because you think that does the job. Don't begrudgingly describe it as fake bit as if you're ashamed of it. Just do it, and ultimately people's ears will judge. Hey, yeah, exactly, wear that badge. Do you have a badge? You should get a badge. You should get an actual badge. It says fake bit. So we've got Sasquatch in here, not just Sasquatch, but the actual Sasquatch, and he is, for my money, I'm going to pause this. I'll just let it run. For my money, the ultimate proponent of chip break, if not the, let's say, ultimate proponent. I'm not going to get into who started what and who founded what, but yeah, check out his stuff as Sasquatch, and he's also by night or whatever. Nigel Knows Snacks on YouTube. Check that out because Nigel reviews snacks, and yeah, you need a sash, and he's very good at it. And I've got a big list of snacks that I'm going to send him from the UK to the US so he can eat them. And yeah, he had some Monster Munch a few days ago, and pickled onion Monster Munch. So, you know, you've all seen those videos where one nationality of person tries something that's a cultural cornerstone of another nationality, and they go, "Ooh, that's weird," and you go, "Well, yeah, okay." It's not quite like that. It's just a guy who loves his snacks, trying some snacks and saying what he thinks about snacks, and I love snacks as well. And that's one of the reasons I'm keeping the camera tight on this area of the room, because if it wasn't, you'd be able to see snack detritus all over the place. And I would say between 20 and 30 empty Pepsi Max bottles on the floor that I've not had a chance to take out. It's otherwise quite tidy in here, but that's evidence of how much code I've written over the past few weeks. So there you go. Pickled onion, man. Wow, it's mad. Sasquatch says, honestly, I love weird snacks. America's kind of in a rut. I haven't been to the US for about coming on 10 years. I think Blip Festival was the last time I went. I couldn't stay long because I didn't want to get caught by immigration for playing a gig without a work permit. So I think it was like 2 or 3 days. So I didn't get many snacks. Got some friends who send me snacks occasionally. But yeah, you're right. Nothing's come up that's made me think, oh, I've got to have that. That is when we met. Oh, this is nice. So yeah, what was today going to be about? We've had fighting against the chip music patriarchy. We've had snacks, and yeah, I was going to talk about a few things. I'll kill this for now. Oh, fucking Hippo Player is a nightmare to kill. I think that's gone now. Hippo Player is a mod player, and I think it'll play Sid as well. Kind of just about manages to synthesize. It's got a play Sid routine on the Amiga. I don't know if I've tried it. Yeah, since the last one, my Tools Daemon, which is this is a custom program that runs on load in Workbench and gives you a right-click menu at the top, a bit like a start menu, customizable. I've always had all my trackers in there. I've been adding apps here as I've been trying to make a music disc, which, hey, let's look at. If I was making a proper music disc, and we're getting back into imposter syndrome territory of what I consider proper and whether I'm ashamed to try and release something as a proper demo scene production. I've released many proper demo scene productions. Usually I've been the musician and a proper coder has been coding it. Proper artists, that kind of thing. This is the first thing that I've done myself. I quite like sharing progress as I go, and times have changed since the old days where it was top secret until the party that you released it at, the competition. You saw it on the screen, everybody went hey or meh or whatever. I can get to parties now. I'd like to get to yeah, there's some parties coming up that I'd like to get to. Big money, man. But you can enter competitions remotely. I just don't really like competitions. And music discs are things that I should explain for anybody who's not sure what a music disc is and why it's significant. So I'm going to take you back, as I do every week, to the late 1980s or 1990 kind of time, before the web. Back when there were just as many crazy people, but they found it harder to talk to each other and to multiply. And when they did talk to each other, they'd do it through Usenet or BBS. Sites at BBS is it was essentially a program running on somebody's computer that kind of kept a hierarchical threaded structure of messages and rooms and subsections, and If it was a pretty fancy BBS, then you'd be able to, multiple people would be able to call in at once. Otherwise, you'd kind of have to keep calling until you got an answer, because it's just on a single phone line to somebody's modem. And you'd get an update of every message that had been posted since you were last on. You could share files, you could chat, sort of. I was never very, I only got online a few times before the web, before 95. But importantly, you could get in contact with people for mail trading, for floppy disk trading. So after piracy started to be really cracked down on, this damn thing keeps slipping. I'll try again to get it steady. The West German police really cracked down on piracy in a big way in the 80s, and the bits of the demo scene that had really grown out of piracy. So if you crack a game, crack the copy protection on a game, share that game around, you want everybody to know that it was your crew who cracked it. So you write a tune, some graphics, some impressive graphical routine, you stick that on at the start of the game. Sometimes you chopped out a bit of game data to fit it on there. Sometimes you just packed it as small as you could. That's really why we get Amiga sample chip tunes, from that effort to get them as small as possible so they would fit at the start of WES software. Microsoft, I love the FidoNet scene, but my folks are never happy about the perceived phone bill. Most of my sharing was done with mail. Yeah, phone bills, man. Jeez. I mean, there's a video. Magnetic Fields was a party in 90 or 91. There's a video kicking about somewhere. Somebody took hours of video with a big camera. And a lot of people, a lot of names you'd recognize, Facet and Nuke of Anarchy, and a couple of times, there's one time where somebody goes to the camera and says, "Oh, come over and meet this guy. He's got like a £2,000 phone bill." The camera goes over and this little kid's like, "Yeah, got a a £2,000 phone bill." Yeah. He's like, "Wow, that's really bad." He's like, "Yeah, I don't know what happened to him. Maybe he sold a kidney or something." £2,000 in 1991. That's serious phone bills. I remember swapping discs with Hoffman all those years ago. Awesome. You probably heard his tunes before anybody else did. Yeah, I didn't meet Hoffman until about 2008, and figured out after a while that he was Dreamfish, and I was like, doing the fanboy routine. Dreamfish, some amazing tunes way back. Yeah, it's digital. And so yeah, sounds like most of you know this story, but anyway, where was I getting to? Yeah, piracy, sort of. The creative aspect of that was something that people retained even when they weren't wares trading, and suddenly people were sharing stuff that was purely to demonstrate their skills on programming the hardware, writing music, doing art, that kind of thing. That's a demo. If it was a demo that was specifically to be run at the start of a piece of cracked software, then that's a cracktro. That's how we describe them now. I'm not sure when people started making the distinction. There's invitro. That's a demo that is an invite to a party. And I remember lots of cracktros that clued me into this whole world of awesome sound and stuff. So I guess, what was I? A bunch of crystal cracks in about 1991 that would throw up BBS phone numbers and messages about parties, like the party, or saying who would be there and what it would be like and stuff like that. I don't know what I thought it was. Something amazing, something like the Razor and Blade Club in Hackers or something like that. It was almost certainly a school hall with a bunch of spotty kids in it. I mean, that's still awesome. That's kind of what parties were still like, even when I started going to them in my 20s. Just bigger halls and sweatier people. Man, that Magnetic Fields party is worth a look. UK parties were relatively rare. There were a fair few. This one was interesting because it was quite far north, not proper north like me, but it might have been like Sheffield or South Yorkshire or somewhere. Might have been Leeds kind of area. I had people from pretty far and wide. Had a lot of wares traders and crackers there, as well as demo sceners, Sheffield, and yeah, it's interesting because most videos from parties at the time tended to be Scandinavian parties and German parties, and it seemed not a bit more polite, but it seemed a bit nicer. Whereas I remember this Magnetic Fields one. It's a fella who's running the Amiga 500 compo, because that's what there was, Amiga 500 mega demo compo. There's a monitor up on a school hall stage, and he's sitting there with his elbow on it, eating a Fray Bentos pie, drinking a pint while everybody's watching this demo on this 12-inch screen. And I was like, that figures. Classy stuff. And if you go to one of the big demo parties now, the production values are stunning, because at every link in the chain in the party organization crew, whether it's projection or getting a huge array of machines to scan conversion, PA, live streaming, networking, everybody involved with that is the kind of person who will know how to rewrite a driver on the fly if they need to, or something like that. So it's an interesting thing. Definitely in the late 2010s, the production values were kind of frightening compared to everything else. If you went to a convention at work, or everything was just shit. There's somebody saying, "Oh, does anybody know how to get this my laptop plugged into the projector?" and stuff like this. And demo parties are something else, but mostly drinking and shouting, and dancing and other things. How did I get onto that? I was talking about music discs. That's what I'm going for. So music discs were great because music discs were essentially albums released digitally, in a fraction of the disk space than a 16-bit 44.1K CD WAV, CD quality WAV would take up. You could not share 700 megabyte CDs digitally, really. And there's something about being able to share a mod where you can get hold of that mod, read the sample text, read a message from somebody, crack it open, listen to or steal the samples, but go through it and see how it was made. It is its own project file. That's really awesome. And to see how it's optimized and see how it's made more efficient. And the more efficient you make that, the more tunes you can pack into a music disc. And if it was an 880 kilobyte or less music disc, it would fit on a floppy and it would be a true music disc. We were talking before about fake bit. I mean, my music disc will not fit on a floppy. There's a version of it that will fit on a floppy, a single floppy disk, an actual disc. That's only chip tunes. None of the jungle tunes are the ones with bigger samples in. But it's 2019. I don't care that much if it doesn't fit on a floppy. It didn't take long before music discs were 3, 4, 5 megabyte affairs. As soon as people were able to to transfer them, especially towards the end of the 90s, because people kept making them for the love of it. It's fun to, you're essentially designing, it's a program that runs, and there are music disks on other platforms as well. There's some amazing PC music disks, and they're small programs that play these tunes with a very minimal custom graphic interface. Essentially, you're distributing your own player, your own executable player that will run on somebody's system, pretty universally for that platform. And stick some messages in, have a bit of fun with it, all that kind of thing. And I always wanted to make a music disc. I always wanted to, I have technically made a music disc in that when I was in undergrad, I submitted a bunch of my composition portfolio on floppy disk, and they didn't know what to do with that. That was in 2002, but it was, even then, 2002, people got a floppy disk and didn't really want to know. That's fine, but it wasn't a proper music disc. I hadn't, or maybe I did code something. I didn't know what the hell I was doing. I took somebody else's code and messed with it. Speaking of not knowing what the hell we're doing, while I am in theory a programmer as part of my job, I've never ever until last week programmed anything on the Amiga. I made some slight adjustments to Protracking. I mean, I know nothing about assembly language, but Stingray of Scarab, the ScoopX, helped me patch in some of my own graphics and make a few tweaks to Protracking that I've talked about in the past. Other than that, nothing. I've always been when I was very young, an Amiga gamer, and since then, an Amiga musician. And for work, God, I know Java for some reason. That's depressing. Kind of wish I didn't. I'm sure it's taken up space in my head that we better spend on something else. JavaScript, all the web stuff for that kind of thing. I can bodge together. I can compile, see if I need to, and make some changes. But I don't really know what I'm doing in other higher level languages. And here we have Amos Pro. Now Amos is I guess you could think of it as a dialect of BASIC for Amiga. The fellow who wrote it initially wrote STOS, S-T-O-S, which is for the ST, the Atari ST, a dialect of BASIC for the Atari. And then he wrote Amos, the Amiga, and Amos Pro came out a few years later. It's been interesting. This is the IDE, this is the editor. You're not just dealing with text files here, because when you can load binary data in to memory banks and kind of they get saved with this project that this is the text component of, and then you can access them. That's weird, kind of weird to me and opaque, but that's how it works, and it does kind of work. I mean, people released games, commercial games written in Amos, and given that, unless you do some really tricky stuff that I don't quite understand, you kind of have to have everything in one enormous text file. And this is just a music disc, and it's 500 lines, and some of it's pretty spaghetti. You know, because it's basic, you're using subroutines and procedures and go-tos and jumps and stuff like that. So a lot of people learn BASIC when they were very young. I never did, and learning it now after I know a few other languages is weird. But hey, no errors. It says so right there. No errors. Yeah, so far. I introduced a few earlier and I took them out again because I thought that wouldn't reflect well on me as the host of Protracking with Syphus. I'll run the music disc and show you what I've come up with so far. bright. In real life, that's a real hot pink. Yeah, it looks really crispy and pink in real life, but it looked kind of washed out there. That's just my cheap webcam. So, yeah, we've got info text here. These are basically the names of the samples that I've squashed into about 5 lines. There are 31 instruments in a Protracking mode, as you remember, and up and down arrows I've set to scroll through those, and we'll see that working a bit better when I load up some of the proper mods. This stuff in the middle is just me testing something out. I'll explain that in a bit. It's not even halfway there, but it's something. These are VU meters, 1 per channel. Remember, we've got 4 channels, 4 tracks in the Amiga, 2 left and 2 right, but I do everything in mono because nah. Stick to mono. And this is that's weird. The mouse only goes down this far. I'm gonna I can't be bothered to reboot. I don't think I set any mouse zones. For some reason the mouse has only gone this far down the screen. It doesn't matter. The mouse doesn't really do anything in this at all, actually. We've got some scroll text here, which is essential for most demos in productions, especially old school ones. What it really needs to do is to be scrolling in a side wave pattern. Yeah, it's a bit like that, but it has Outside Digital Tech, it thinks it's in NTSC mode, but I think it might be something. I think it might be a result of usually this doesn't run well after Protracker's been running, and I think I haven't rebooted since Protracker, so I'm going to reboot, which doesn't take long on an Amiga. Doesn't take long at all, even my Amiga. It does have an accelerator in it, but modest, NO30. DH1. Let's go music disk. Yeah, I've done something weird there. That seems to be new. Doesn't matter. Yeah, we've got the scroll text here. Really, there's a few things that should be not machine font that's been blitted across the screen, or just kind of offset across the screen. It should be, all those characters should be replaced by bitmap font characters cut out of a map, out of a big IFF, and then put on a sine wave scroller that goes woo, like that, with a copper list changing the color palette and all that cool stuff that you've probably seen if you're remotely interested in Amiga. And then we've got a menu down here. They're supposed to be mouse click zones, but I think I found a bug in Amos Pro that won't let me do that. It doesn't matter. Ultimately, I would want to draw an interface in Deluxe Paint pixel art interface with buttons that I can turn into zones themselves. But right now, the keys work to select the numbers you see on the screen, and we can a little fade out there. And it's flickering down here for some reason. Ugh. Right. Oh, that mouse thing might be something to do with this test stuff that I'm doing here. I'm not sure. And there's some glitching. I'm not even going to try and fix that glitch. I like that glitch when it comes up. Never goes to plan. It actually was, the VU meters were displaying fine, and then I compiled it, ran it on an emulator, and that went wonky. And now it's flickering on here, but it might be because I'm overlapping some stuff up here, and yeah. So yeah, now we've got a proper module on the go. The menu tune is just a single pattern looping around, and I haven't really, it's kind of an unfinished tune. This one is a finished tune that I released a few years ago. See, I'd forgotten why I did this or where I did this. That's a nice thing about sample text. So usually when you finished making a tune, you might go through and rename the samples to form a message. Sample text, sample info, message. People call them different things. It's not officially supposed to be a message. That's not what the Protracker format calls it. They are sample names, but it's a great place to stick a message to somebody who's just got your tune on a floppy disk through the post, or people used to put email addresses in, and before they existed, BBS phone numbers, post addresses, telephone numbers. More personal info than you'd ever share with anybody now, but that was quite a tight-knit community. Too Fool by Syphus of Uprough. A quick and dirty UKG mod, UK Garage mod done in an afternoon for Sundown 2015. But I think I missed the deadline anyway. I think actually I didn't miss the deadline. I think it did get played. I'm not sure what happened. Somebody said they liked it. That was cool. Big shout to Party Amiga Scene, and of course the Uprough. I think I must have optimized this afterwards and chopped out a few samples. Oh, that vocal sample's something. Probably that was me saying, crediting Aretha Franklin with the vocal sample. But I must have removed something. What I probably did was chop two samples. I'm sure I found some way of saving space. Please listen in mono. There we go. So, some more tunes in here. Rainy Day Jungle with some powerful words from Still I Rise by Maya Angelou. 2017 was... I remember this. I did this in the coffee shop when I was procrastinating over some work. In an emulator. Yeah, so... chip tunes, you can fit loads of them on a floppy disk, that's fine. And all these buttons do is to run a fade out routine. Just lowers the volume pretty quickly, and then load the new tune into the memory slot that the previous one was in. Fire a bunch of play routines. The play routine, first thing it does is go through all of the instruments, takes the sample data, sample names, and keeps them in an array, which is then displayed here. Ordinary World by Duran Duran, covered by Syphus Uprough, blah blah blah, and that kind of thing. And I don't know what the escape scan code is, so I can't use escape to close it. Gotta use spacebar. I'll figure that out sometime. If anybody knows, please let me know. Yeah, so this looks way more complicated than I feel it needs to. But Amos treads this fine line between giving you a lot of access to the Amiga's hardware and kind of, long story short, Amos Pro programs and games are, on the whole, less likely to be super fast and smooth and efficient than something that's done in pure assembly language, which I'm also trying to learn very slowly. But this does the job for something like a music disk. All I really wanted was to be able to run something with my graphics, my music, and my text in. And so yeah, job done. It would be nice to, when I get time, to polish it a bit and maybe get some kind of an effect in. But as soon as you start thinking effects, escape character code 27, 1B in hex. Thank you. Let me. Man, this is live streaming. We're doing it live. Right. Where's the bit where I try to? Actually, I'll do a Control F. What do I find? For fuck's sake. Nope. Previous there. If key input, that string holds the last character, I'm not talking about types. And if it was a space, if it was a spacebar hit, then go to finish. Pretty straightforward. Scan code 6927. So I don't know where I got 69 from. Let's see. Nope. Useful scan codes. I mean, I thought escape is pretty useful, but it's not in there, the F keys, it's not in numeric, and it's not in other keys, but usually it's pretty useful. Like, I've just used it to close the help menu. Anyway, thank you for that. 27, let's see. No errors. Nope. There might be something strange going on. It's possible that Amos Pro takes over the escape key while it's running in from the editor, because you can drop out to monitor and debug. So I think that might be what it is. But thank you for that. I'm going to keep that in. Might work after compilation, question mark. A lot of mights in my comments. Yeah, a lot of possibles, hypotheticals. So yeah, we're off the beaten track of protracking with Syphus a little bit, but like I said, it's something I've always wanted to do with my Protracker tunes, and I've done it, and I'm pretty chuffed with it. I'm sure it could be tidied up and made a lot better, but it didn't take me that long to get it organized, and if I can get it to the point where I'm happy to share the code, then maybe somebody else wouldn't need to mess around so much if they wanted to do something similar. Excuse me. So we set the palettes, all the colors in the palette, to 0, to black. We open a screen, we load an IFF, that's an image file that I've made in Deluxe Paint or Personal Paint. It's been all over the place in different programs, but I've reverted back to this, having also tried to get some images in as bobs or blitter objects, which I thought would let me run them and scroll them with transparency. I'm sure it's possible, but I haven't figured out how. I'll go back to that. Can you pull the keyboard output and output the result of the screen? I should have tried that. I'm sure I can. I'm gonna do that right now. Why didn't I? Something similar happened earlier on today. All my common sense and experiences completely abandoned me. I needed to pull something less frequently than the 50 times a second loop on here. And I was asking a friend of mine, like, oh, the timer doesn't seem very reliable, I don't know how to do this. And he's like, well, have you tried just incrementing the value and resetting it to 0 every time? I was like, well, yeah, like I would in any other language. Just a new language, you always think there's some magical way of doing things that you are not doing, and that's imposter syndrome, and that's just everybody's personal, some people's personal challenge. Some people just don't care and they just smash it, and fair play to them. Let's find somewhere to put that that in key. So that's a string representation. I think we can find input output, the keyboard input, that's not helpful. Scan code returns the scan code of the last key press recognized by in key, as well as character keys. Yeah, I mean, I've been checking against the scan code. I don't know why it didn't occur to me to print the scan code as a string, so I'm going to try that now. Locate, I think, is and then that's how we convert it to a string, if anybody can see that, if it matters. Flip, what was it? Scan code, which is a global or something. legal text mode parameter. What have I done? Not sure what I did there. Let's try that. That's better, but it's right at the top and it's been blocked. Oh, cut 64 is the spacebar. Yeah, okay. Come on. Whoops. I don't have that many pixels. $69, that's what I thought it was originally. I did notice that it, there's another value, isn't there, for releasing it? Let's try that again. When you release it, it shows 9. If I do why is the scan code change? God, I don't know what's going on there. But that's an interesting thing that I will follow up in my own time. Yeah, so let's get back on with it. Load an image onto that screen. That screen is set up about half the height. 320 is my width in pixels. 100 is the height. These are offsets that you have to do to display an Amiga screen in a place where a telly or a monitor will actually show it, because you can actually point those pixels at offsets that are outside the bounds of CRT monitors. Actually, this one, what's going on here? Anyway. And that's another screen. That one was a low-res screen. This one's a high-res screen, so I can get smaller text. It's 640 wide, but it's still the same height. Pixels are wider than they are at all on the Amiga, and I'm getting into territory I'm not really qualified to talk about, but yeah, graphics are crazy. They're really crazy. They're still crazy, but they're a different kind of crazy in Amiga land. So yeah, the aspect ratio, the pixel aspect ratio changes, and a high res gives you a horizontal resolution increase, but unless you use interleaving or interlacing, sorry, then you don't boost the scans vertically or something. Anyway, I've grabbed get palette. I've grabbed the palette from the image that I loaded in. I'm also reading scroll text, just a file of ASCII, which is somewhere. Oh God, what's it called? Thank you. Just like that. I had to really mess about with this because Amos's text routine was showing things like carriage return, line breaks, and some other null characters as well as unknown characters. Null characters is a problematic one because Protracker pads all of its strings with null characters. So you've got, I think, 22 characters for a sample name, but if you just call it kick, it's got to pad the rest of those. Otherwise, the header structure will be all wrong. And a Protracker module is basically a whole load of header stuff followed by a whole dump of sample data, and the header tells you where to find which offset you can find each sample. And it's a really quite nicely constructed thing. It makes a lot of sense. We'll talk about that sometime, just for fun, because hey, we're protracking with Syphus, we might as well get into the nitty-gritty. But yeah, I don't know why Amos was doing that, but I had to do on load. I do after loading it, I do a search and replace for every null character and every line break, and replace those with either nothing or space. Maybe it is unusual to get null characters in text, but it made those sample displays look crazy. Song menu, so that's a two-dimensional array I've set up. Ideally, this would be the only place that you would make changes to which modules it was going to run. Now, I could run some code that searched the directory and loaded anything that seemed to be a mod. It's better to do it explicitly because you can't rely on a mod. Yeah, it's my thing, so I can rely on me putting a mod extension or some kind of recognizable pattern in the name. But the Amiga doesn't care about extensions. The only extension Amiga cares about is .info. Other than that, it tries to use file headers, binary headers, to figure out what a file is, which is quite a good way of figuring out what a file is. On Windows and Mac, a lot of the time you change an extension, you get the wrong program opening something. If the Amiga goes into the header and if it sees form, then it knows it's an IFF of some kind, and then it figures out the rest from there. But also, each program is just reading binary and doing its thing. This is early days of multitasking operating systems. So yeah, I lay out a string that can be used as a menu title, properly formatted, and then the path, the relative path to where this thing is. Now you can bundle these up into a memory bank and make it a bit more opaque, so the user is just getting one binary. I don't really care. I want people to be able to, if I'm distributing the modules, I don't want to have to rip the modules with a module ripper, which is a thing people used to do, because people used to like trying to hide the source a bit. There's no hiding, there's no hiding stuff from demo sceners. Doesn't seem like there was ever any point in that. Current tune 0, that's because I want the first tune to be that menu. Music track load, where it actually gets loaded. Here's a channel toggle mask, that's a bunch of binary bits all set to 1. That mask is put over in one of the volume commands and turns all the channels on. You can attach those to keys, and when I was testing this out, I had individual mute a channel at a time, just like you can in Protracker. Now playing, I'm supposed to be using that for other things, but they're not there yet. And then we play it. This is all still in the init. This is before the main loop is started, but we kick off the play straight away at volume 0. Then we do this loop that goes around for I equals 0 to 64 step 1. That's a for loop in Amos Pro. Waiting for the V blank. Oh god, I'm not gonna bore the ass off you with talking about V blanks. Very short version. It's a little window of time you get. The time that it takes the photon gun in a cathode ray tube monitor, having just done the pixels from top left to the top right 200 times all the way along, firing all those pixels up, gets to the bottom, and then it goes up to the top again. That's a little window of time in which you want to set up your screen ready for the next draw to start. So it's also a good timer. It's a reliable 50 hertz timer. So if you say wait V blank, you at least can regulate the speed at which this happens. Otherwise, it might happen too fast. to be a nice smooth volume fade. So we're increasing the, what's going on here? I don't know what the hell's going on there. Oh, that's that might have been an attempt to get the screen fading working. It didn't quite work. Maybe that is what it is. Oh, that's, no, sorry, that is that I is being used there for an offset on the location of the logo, which slides down from there, which I quite like. It's the little things. Show that screen. Oh, set up an array for the info text. I'll speed through this a bit more. This is when I replace all of those null characters and the weird characters that it won't display properly from the sample text. This is a thing that I just did this afternoon, or this evening. I was getting wrapped up in it and I thought, I've got to stop or else I won't bother to stream, and I want to stream. So it's me testing whether I can get real VU meters working. So in Protracker, if you've watched this before, you'll have seen those. And each channel has a colored bar that goes up and down. And on here, we've got the VU meters down here. And you'll notice if I put on the second tune, it's a good example. They're not tracking the volume of each channel very well. Because even while that drum loop is still playing, they're just fading off. This one's tracking pretty well because it gets triggered every time there's a note that is note data. Nothing, it doesn't know anything about the sample. All it knows is that the note. Oh dear, glitches. Sorry about that. Is it frozen for anybody else? Is there anybody else there? Apparently the stream is going funny. I've got green lights over here. I do have a new router that I haven't really bothered to set up properly. I'll press on unless it. Let me know if it comes back. But if the sound still works, I'm just talking. So yeah. Yeah, so these are what's called fake VU meters, and most of the time that's good enough, especially in a chiptune. I'll run a chiptune to show you. So 5, Welcome Home's a chiptune. Now, chiptunes are great for fake VU meters because they're firing out note data all the time. You rarely get much of a gap between notes in a chiptune. So, so the ballistics on those look kind of, they're not real, but they look kind of real. There's that one that was not doing anything before nowadays, and it's staying quite high up there. And then this one, that's following the volume exactly. I've scaled it down, but that's between 0 and 64. And that's jumping much more precisely than a real VU emitter would do. And then at the other end of the scale, you've got stuff like this where only the trigger and note fired the VU emitter. And these are long samples playing at low sample rates. So that's not helpful at all. It's a shame, because I like VU emitters that look like they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. There is a way to do real ones, but and I thought I would be clever today by digging into the Amiga hardware reference manual and looking at the hardware register addresses. That is a memory address that lets you control the hardware. That's what you're doing all the time if you code in an assembly language. And you can do it in here with peeks and pokes, the good old basic things, and deeks, which is a double, and leaks, which is a long. There's no leaks, because yeah, we're. So I thought, well, I'll pull the audio channels, and that just caused havoc. And Stingray from Scarab and Scoopex told me. I knew that there were read-only and write-only registers, and that you shouldn't read to write only and write to the read only, but I couldn't find any documentation that said which ones they were. Maybe I didn't look hard enough, but Stingray put me right, and I'm sorry for my crimes. So yeah, there's not really any way to get from the horse's mouth exactly what amplitude the Amiga is kicking out audio. And what was really amazing about the Amiga's audio when the Amiga came out in 85, 86 was that the custom chip, Paula is the custom chip that handles audio, and it lets you play back samples that are accessed directly from memory, DMA, without any kind of software mixing. What it gives you control over is the sample that's going in, the period or the frequency or the sample rate, whatever you want to call it, at which it's played back, so the speed essentially that it's burning through those samples, the rate at which it's reading them, and the volume. That's all. So every effect that we've looked at in Protracker, if you boil them down, all they are is timing, pitch, or volume, which are the only things that really Paula lets you mess with. Now, you could do software mixing if you want. You have to have a whole abstraction layer which chews up CPU, but Paula will kick out samples with almost negligible CPU impact, which is great. It's meant that since the beginning, the Amiga's had really decent 8 and occasionally kind of weird 14-bit sound at reasonable sample rates if you don't mind spending a bit of memory on it. If there was a software mixer, if there was software mixing going on at some level, then maybe I could peek the memory addresses of the driver and kind of sniff the buffer before it went out, but it doesn't work like that. The DMA reads the sample data directly from either memory, yeah, and especially in Protrack, it's always coming from chip memory. And the only way you can see what's going out is to see what you're putting in, and it's hard to see what you're putting in if you didn't write the replayer, and I didn't write this replayer. This is closed source. It's an extension to AMOS Pro. It gives me some interesting data, but not a great deal. The most important thing it gives me is the start address of the module, because once I've got the start address, I can go through and look at various offsets to see how many instruments or what lengths each instrument is. I can get note data. I can get all that pattern data that we see in Protracker. I can get it line by line, do something with it. I can synchronize a screen flash to row 0. I can move things around according to where we are in the track. I can even give myself special commands in Protracker that I can then read in the program and do something cool with, run an animation, get a band to play along with, that kind of thing. That's always interested me, and I've done that kind of stuff on PC and Mac with Porter Mod, which is a replayer library that I'll not go into now. But yeah, you can start to sniff around in that, and then I was shouted out on Twitter earlier. So last week I thought, okay, well, I've written myself some notes, which is unusual, in the comments, which is what I should always do. Try to calculate real volume. We want the sample volume as set in the instrument. So remember that samples have a default volume up to 40 hex, up to 64 in decimal. And that can always be overridden by the C command, which is handy if you want to, well, we know why it's handy. I'll go back and do another session on that. So every note that comes through on a certain channel, I'm going to find out which instrument it was, going to look at that instrument, see what the volume of that instrument is by default. Then I'm going to see if this row also contains a C command. If it does, if the default volume is 40 and the C command says 20, then okay, I'm modified to 20. And then I want to see if the next line, or any line has an A or an EA or an EB fine tune or volume slide command, and then I want to calculate those and see, which I can do by determining what speed the module is running at and what parameter is in that effect. I can work out on the number of on the length of time since the number of rows since the instrument was triggered, what I should adjust the sample volume to now. And then the real tricky thing is to know what the average amplitude of the sample is over time and whether it has a loop in it. And that's what that stuff in the middle of the screen is. That's my attempt to get an average of 8 points. Of 8 points across a sample. I chose 8 because if I can get a vague idea at each of those 8 points, rather than take an average, then I could a perfectly timed breakbeat, as we've discussed on here, should hit at either 2, 4, 6, or 8 of those points. And yeah, if I'm checking the amplitude, and you can see actually if I load that up, the amplitude here is high, low, high, low, high, low, high, low. That is because the instrument it's checking is the breakbeat, which is a 4/4 loop. God, this is a massive amount of effort and thought for something that's completely pointless and will not make any material difference to anybody's enjoyment of this music disc if anybody ever sees it or downloads it. But I can't, until I figured it out, I'm not going to stop thinking about it. So yeah, and then you got to think, well, is the sample still playing? If it is it looping? If it's not, then we'll assume the volume's hit 0, even though 0 command hasn't been given. If the loop length is greater, we can calculate that and we can see if it should still be playing. In theory, and I've had some advice from Mrs. Beanbag on Twitter. She is a name, I'm not sure she mainly codes in assembly or Amos Pro these days, but she's written some games and she's active on the English Amiga board. She suggested that I get root mean square averages of those samples at a series of windows, and that would be a better way of doing it, but I'm going to have to research for the... Hi there, AmigaPal. Hello. Thank you. I'm going to have to research that because I'm not great at maths, but that's the kind of thing that we could do here. Amos Pro will give you just enough access to hardware registers and to memory directly, and to data that's in memory, like IFFs or modules, to let you do that. And the extension, I'm using the AMCAF extension, which is fantastic, has a lot of stuff that, you know, every time some kind of programming or development paradigm comes out, whether it's a DAW or an integrated IDE, you always get some plugin that is just does everything that the original thing should have done, and this is one of those. It's got much better music support, but it's got a whole lot of other things. You find a lot of people who are making libraries and extensions for development and productivity purposes in the 80s and 90s on the Amiga, because the Amiga reference manual, all the Amiga publicity, all the marketing had always had audio right up there alongside everything else, because this was the first real multimedia PC, multimedia personal computer. You find that development followed that. Third party and kind of cottage industry development, people, like, it would be a real treat now for me to see audio given some love. Every time Unreal Engine comes out, I'm a games developer and we're working in Unreal Engine. When a new version of Unreal Engine comes out and audio is in the change notes, I'm like, yes, great. And you know, I know they care about audio. Aaron and Dan, I know they care a lot about audio and do a lot of work, but it's always at the bottom of that list because everybody's interested in graphics and stuff. And yeah, fair enough. And but it's nice to read documentation from way back when people were audio's right up there. It's just as important as everything else. Like, I'm not going to give you 10 new string functions and not give you something that makes audio easier to deal with. No judgmental stuff about the relative frivolity of audio compared to doing sensible things with comparable business machines or anything like that. So that's nice. But it is closed source. I don't know what the replayer is, if it's his own or if it, yeah. I can access the start address of the internals of the replayer, but it's gibberish. I don't have any reference manual for that, so I don't think I'll ever get the info that I want, nor will I be able to poke it to scan through the module, which I kind of wanted to be able to do. Anyway, it doesn't matter because I've got what I want, which is a music disk that works. So that's something. And yeah, I mean, you can go and grab this. AMOS Pro comes on 5 floppies, and then the update comes on 3 more floppies. The update has a compiler in. I mean, man, it's wild. There's a GUI for everything. There's a lovely pixel art GUI for everything. And I'll open the object editor. It's got some actually pretty amazing tools for, I mean, you could make, except for, I mean, actually, it does have its own music format. You could make a game from start to finish. It might not be great, but you could make a game from start to finish with AMOS Pro and no other tools. That's pretty cool. We've got a sample editor here and a sample maker. Let's have a look at the edit samples. Yeah, like, if I have my sampler plugged in, which I don't because it's trash, then I could do that. How can I quit? No consistency across the UIs, and that's the way I like it. Let's have a look at the object editor. So this is where you would load in memory banks, are kind of a custom binary storage format that AMOS Pro uses, and that I'm still trying to get my head around as I go. I've got a couple of bits of graphics of my own stored in here. I've been trying to merge the palettes and change the transparency colors and stuff. But yeah, you can do quite a bit of editing in here. I mean, look, that's not quite the full spectrum, but about half of the commands you would get in Deluxe Paint 4, maybe 3. A lot of useful things going on. But the purpose of this really is to arrange and optimize and grab palettes and swap colors and get all those ducks in a row so that you can get the game or whatever it is looking the way you want. And it's really geared towards games. There is an extensive menu system that I'm clearly never going to bother looking at. Have I changed anything in this? If it runs, I'll save it. No, it doesn't. What the hell? Oh god, it's all gone. Yeah, I don't think that's bad. Not as bad as it looks. I think I know why that is. Anyway, yeah, let's have a look in Deluxe Paint. And this is what I used for the logo, which, so High Score is ostensibly a demo group. It's had a maximum of maybe 2 or 3 members. It's released absolutely nothing. It's been theoretically in existence for 10 years, although we never got around to doing anything. I think it was me and Dopefish, and maybe not Parapete. Maybe I never roped him into it. Never thought of using Amos to make a music disc. Very cool. Thank you. Yeah, it's kind of desperation. I didn't want to get into I don't know, although I know Java, I don't know C well enough to feel like I could be bothered to start setting that environment up on Amiga and then learning it in parallel. My assembly skills are almost zip, and I thought, well, yeah, actually using Amos Pro is a lot like using processing or something. You know, you fight your way past some slightly gnarly syntax, but after that, it flows like any language, and it gives you a lot of that stuff in one place. The help system is actually really good. You put your cursor on the first character of a command or a function and press the help key, and if you're lucky, it'll find that and give you an example, and you can load up another file which gives you a runnable example of that thing in action. That's pretty nice. It's the manuals that are available are very detailed but not entirely reliable. There's a bit of confusing stuff, but that's documented and people can help you out with that. Yeah, so that's cool. Deluxe Paint, I had this. If you had an Amiga, you probably had this. I'm sure mine came with the Amiga. I'm not sure if it was 4, it might have been 3. Got the manual somewhere. Might even have been 2. I'm quite old. Excuse me. So I'll get to where I've been keeping that stuff, and we'll have a look. High School Hot Pink. Yes, I do. Yeah, there we go. Oh God, this pink is so hot, it won't even. This webcam cannot deal with how hot it is. There, that's a bit closer to what it looks like on my end. I wish I had a working. Well, I say I wish I had a working CRT. As I may have mentioned on here before, I threw my Philips CM8833-2 into a skip because it had gone so badly wrong that any of my attempts to repair it was certain to kill me. Those things can store up a lot of mains power, and I would absolutely have died if I'd gone in there with a soldering iron. So it had to go, and it's a shame. But this thing has RGB SCART input direct from the Amiga, which is fantastic. No lag. It's almost like using a CRT, just without that phosphor glow late at night, and without that clunk, occasional magnetic clunk. But yeah, even now, if you want to do, I mean, occasionally I need to do some pixel art for one reason or another, or I need to. There have been legitimate reasons, even work-related reasons for me to need to do a bit of pixel art over the past 10 years. And after a bit of faffing around in Photoshop, I always end up coming back to Deluxe Paint. Or there are some decent programs on modern platforms now. Sprite and Graphics 2 was great for a while, but it hasn't been updated for a long time. The SDLs are really clunky and slow. It's not really working very well for me. I had a backpack at first as Robsoft. Pretty sure it was DP1, 2 or 3 that came with mine. Yeah, AmigaPal, I love DPaint. Maybe the best app ever created for Amiga. It is fantastic. Personal Paint I have on here as well. It's almost a perfect rip-off. It's just the toolbars at the other side. But it does other things. It was developed for a lot longer. And it will import a whole lot of newer formats. It will convert PNG. It might take a while if you Amiga's unaccelerated, but it will do that. But really, and there are things going on here that I never learnt and have never had to. But for close pixel work, man, it's great. I love it. And yeah, so I get out of that and get into proper paint. So I'm still trying to figure out how to kind of merge palettes and get some of these images loaded in as blitter objects. I need to know more about the blitter and learn more and understand how these bit planes are and palettes are interacting, because what I want is to, I'll show you what I want actually, since you're here, captive audience. I'm not saying you can't leave, it's getting weird. Logo Sky Workspace, I think that's the one. Yeah. So the idea was, I thought it would be really cool to have this sitting over this, and then the background scrolling. So I'd have I'd chop two halves out of that screen, put them on other logical screens, and then wrap the whole thing around on a scroll. And then I thought, do you know what? It would be nice to draw up a New York subway carriage, and then stick this on the top of it, and then run that, and then sync a rail leap with pattern with row 0, row 32, stuff like that. I did do that in the code just to have this wobbling around, and it worked all right. You only need to go like a pixel, and it's clear what's going on. That's pretty cool. But I will figure out how to do that, how to get that transparency to work in Amos the way I want it to, unless I learn assembly in time to do it that way instead. I'm following Photon of ScoopX's tutorials, which are well worth a look. He's done about 50 of them on YouTube. He's very patient and explains things pretty well. And I'm doing that in ASM Pro. I think he uses ASM 2, which is his own version, I think, of ASM 1. Let's read some source there. So here's what it looks like. All my notes so I know what the hell I'm doing. And all it does is this, but this is really cool. Like, yeah, okay, if you have to explain why something's really cool, it might not be really cool, but I'm telling you, this is really cool. To know that you making these hardware registers do something to make this. I mean, all these custom chips, they're essentially a graphics card. The coprocessor, the copper and the blitter and stuff like that. Copper lists. I don't think I'm using it. That's just a raster line. Yeah, man, dual playfield. AmigaPal, NYC. I didn't realize. Good stuff. Yeah, dual playfield mode. I try to get that working in Amos, but apparently there's a bug with it. Somebody's trying to fix it, but that's been on ice for a few years. So ultimately, to do some of the things I'd quite like to do, I should just get myself learning assembly language properly. It's starting to make a bit of sense to me finally after all these years. So yeah. Excuse me, that's a fierce cough. I'm gonna just turn down the mic a bit for a minute. There we go. Sorry if that wasn't enough. Yeah, even in stock ECS and A500, do some crazy stuff. It's lovely. And actually, all of Photon's tutorials are on A500. He's a real advocate for the A500, and there's a lot you don't need to know about 020 or 30 or 40, and I'll keep an eye on that. I can run things in various compatibility modes if I need to, and I've got an enormous stack of Amigas over there for any occasion. But, I mean, how about we... oh, that's what I said I would do. What time is it? Jeez, 10:05. Been talking for a while. So... I'm going to see if I can switch scenes to AmigaPal and talk about that for a little bit, because it's had a bit of an update. There's also a glitch if you work with an assembler. The planes are offset by one word, 16 pixels, right? Wow, okay. I've started following Photon's tutorials, got as far as playing a mod and chucking a bitmap around. Cool. That's, hey, you've got yourself a music disc right there, my friend. Yeah, it's just trimming after that. It's just messing around the edges, frills. Yeah, so there's an update on AmigaPal, which I shouldn't really have left it until now to talk about, but hey, there we go. God, that's fallen down again. Man, I need better gaffer tape. This webcam's running hot as well. I do have better gaffer tape, but that's in my Go box for work. I don't want to be on set and not have the proper stuff, so this is crappy duct tape. Proper cloth gaffer tape is in my Pelican case. There we go. How's that looking? Does that look... Can you see a garish Electron app on my Mac? Because that's what it is. Yeah, so AmigaPal, I've talked about it before. I did a session on using it to convert stuff, and I'll do a quick conversion on here. I'm going to not be able to see... oh, no, I'm going to move things around so I can see what people are saying, because that would be the polite thing to do. Yeah, so still a drag and drop kind of thing. Now you get to set the output directory. If you clear it, then files that have been converted will end up in the same directory as the source. So the WAV that you loaded in will be saved as an 8svx in the same directory. Thank you for complimenting the font. The last time I used a classic font on Chip Disco, I think it was, some people were moaning about it and like, oh, you use a stupid font. This is like Amiga scene people, demo scene people. And, like, oh. And at the time I was like, okay, well I should probably use a more sensible font. They're like, fuck off. I don't know. Right, this is Micronite, I think, or Pot Noodle. No, it's Micronite. Yeah, and I applied it to everything, even select boxes. I don't care. Yeah, so let's drag and drop some stuff. I have a directory here called PadMaker. I have lots of directories called PadMaker. It's when I spend a few hours going into Ableton Live and just making loads of pads. I love pads, love them. And actually, I don't think we're going to get any audio from this because how can I get this to work? I might have created a feedback loop that will kill us all. Let's find out. You hear me? Right. Out of internal sound draw. Yeah, that's why I did a dedicated session last time, wasn't it, on emulators and AmigaPal, so that I wouldn't have this problem with OBS only understanding the first two channels of any audio interface, despite the fact that I have very fancy audio interfaces. There is no better way to go than audio feedback loop. That is my preferred cause of death. And anyway, so there you go. But I have, oh, well, you can still see what it looks like. I'll drop a thing on there. There's a sample, it's on the thing. You can do a lot of what you could do the last time. I can't remember what I've added and what stayed the same, but now you can set globally the batch settings that you want. So the target Protracker note you can set here in this big thing. You can preview sample rate and bit rate, you get a pretty decent sense of how the sample will sound at the sample rate and bit rate that you selected. Well, the bit rate's always going to be 8-bit, but you can A/B between how it sounds now and how it will sound after conversion. Normally, the principal difference with an 8-bit sample is you will hear unsmoothed fades as it loses audio resolution in what was previously quite a smooth fade to 0. So they will be more pronounced. You will get hiss for longer, and then a few kind of clicks off. That's just the nature of reducing bit rate. You're reducing volume resolution, bigger steps between every bit, and that's what the Amiga has. And cool, I love it. I don't care. That's why we're here. And then yeah, we still got a low cut and a high cut you can apply. And I talked about, in fact, I applied this, I added this feature after the Protracking with Syphus session when I realized that I had an amen loop, a breakbeat, with lots of bass, tonal bass frequency that really tied it into a key signature that was other than the one that our tune was in. And I thought, well, actually, all I need this sample for is the high end. All I want it doing is doing its junglist amen thing, rattling around in the top. So what I wished I'd had was a low cut or a high pass filter to take out everything below about 150. And so that's what we've got here. They kind of overlap a bit, and it's not Butterworth. It's not really knife edge. It's yeah, you can hear live. You can hear live how that's going to sound, and that's quite handy for some people. Or you can just ignore it. And at 40 and 2000, it's not going to affect anything, especially once we've converted to 8SVX. This 8K post low pass is after you've done the sample, the downsampling. Then sometimes you get a hiss that you don't want. It's hard to preview it, but sometimes there's a certain level of hiss from the dithering that you might want to use a low pass filter to kind of chop off. 8K is usually good for getting rid of that, but it's a blunt instrument really. It's just easier than doing it on the Amiga, and a little bit more elegant or gentle, at least, than the filter in the Protracker, which is harsh. Socks path, you need socks installed somewhere. That's the same as it was. Apply to wall. So now you can change per sample. So if you've got a batch of 20, but you know that 3 of them need to be maybe the snare drums or kick drums or bass samples. Doesn't matter if they're C2, but then you've got 2, 3 really nice pads with lots of resonant filters and stuff. You want those to be C3 higher, A3. Then you can set those. But if you change your mind, you say, right, I just want to get these all converted to C3, then apply to all. We'll go through the list and do them all. Makes sense. And then trim, of course. You've got a live update here of the target file size and the target duration. Now, what you might remember from my discussion of 8-Bit Bubsy's fix for Protracker 2.3D, which he calls 2.3E, which is what I use, and his clone of 2.3D to modern platforms, which includes a lot of bug fixes. One of the bugs he fixed is not really a bug. It's that, well, it is a bug, but Protracker's always been able to support samples larger than 64 kilobytes, but the bug was in recognizing a loop point that was beyond that. So functionally, and because the replayers subscribe to that as well, people used to be constrained to 64 kilobytes as a maximum sample size in Protracker. He's kind of loosened that up. Some people weren't too sure. I think format wasn't too, thought maybe we should just leave it all as it is. But given that nowadays it's a bit easier to get if somebody listens to one of my mods, it's likely that they're listening on YouTube, Instagram, or an MP3 or a WAV. So I don't know how I'm going to tackle that when it comes. But anyway, you can use AmigaPal to keep a close eye on the file size of your sample. Now, if it's too big, it doesn't matter. Protracker will just chop everything out at the back. But what you might find is that if you love this whole sample, it's 137 bytes. That's not going to fit in Protracker. But if the data you're interested in is towards the back, you can't instruct Protracker to load a sample with an offset. You can't tell it, oh, if you're going to throw something out, throw out the front. It is only ever going to throw out the remainder after it loads in as much as it can get, and then say no more. So yeah, you might want to trim that just so that there's no doubt you get exactly what you're hoping to get. And then I did have some fancy plans for how I could add warnings for those, but I couldn't be bothered. You can just use your eyes and read 63,810 bytes. That'll do me. That'll fit nicely in anybody's Protracker replayer. Mono mixdown is the same, left and right, or left or right, and you can preview that as well. Sample rate, you can go in and put in a custom sample rate if you want in hertz. That's just playback volume. And yeah, convert separately or batch conversion. And then this little logo that I made again, and did I use Deluxe Paint for that? Or maybe I used Sprite for that. Yeah, so that's AmigaPal, up to date. Oh, the other thing I did, the other important thing, if you care, and if you've ever used it, you'll have noticed that it takes up a huge amount of memory footprint and hogs a lot of CPU. Electron apps do that anyway. They're a quick way of getting multi-platform apps. I think the old Slack client used Electron. They might still use it, very hyper-optimized, but mine wasn't until I realized that I was doing a lot of things in a very wasteful way. I was caching a lot of waveform analysis. I was turning things into blobs, carrying them in RAM and reading them to work around certain things. I made a few negligible sacrifices, and I managed to reduce the RAM footprint by about half and the CPU load by about half. So now you can load like 50 samples in here. It might take a while to get everything drawn and ready on screen. Most software would do that if you drop 50 files import on it. But then it'll read straight from disk. Anytime you press play on a sample, it'll read straight from disk, and it'll be a lot slicker and faster. So that's the current state of AmigaPal, and I'm really outstaying my welcome here. It's coming up, it's 20 past 10, I might as well go for the 2 hours. I might as well actually open Protracker, because hey, it's Protracking with Syphus. I'm gonna do a reboot, because yeah, it's probably time. So yeah, I did convert those samples. Now we'll find out if I know where I put them. And you can hear how they ended up. And you can imagine what they sounded like before, but you don't need to, because nobody cares what a high fidelity, 16 or 24-bit sample sounds like. If it did, there wouldn't be Protracking with Syphus. We're all about the griminess. Where did I put them? I probably put them in samples. Put them anywhere. Yeah, PadMaker 2. That's what it is. Let's get back to a sampler and have a look. Let's make sure we're in sample loading mode, and we'll lose the directory again. I've had trouble saving configs for some reason. I think I know why. People sometimes blame rogue bytes for things that happen, but it is a rogue byte. I think it's my rogue byte from ptconfig, which is my online Protracker config editor that for quite a while was not really working. Oh, it was working, but not entirely compatible. But the Protracker history is a story of rival incompatibilities. It's all part of the fun. Samples. Right, now you get to hear something that isn't my voice. It says alright, but it's not alright, is it? Jesus, what's... Oh, that's the file name. Okay. Well, something horrible's just happened. Oh, that's why. Oh, for God's sake. Right. There we go. Isn't that nice? Nice house chord. Different octaves, because I think ahead. That's nice. Well, that's quite nice, isn't it? Yeah. So you'll have to imagine what they sounded like before conversion, but pretty good. And I think they still sound pretty good. So I'm pretty happy with my recipe for socks now, having tried it a lot. And remember that once you get into a production, once you get into a mod, especially if you have multiple high quality or complex samples, you'll find that a lot of things that might annoy you about the conversion process when you listen to that sample in isolation really just fade into the you know, a lot of what cheers you up about electronic music is high-end distortion that's deliberately put there to sparkle up a hi-hat or a cymbal crash or something like that, and a lot of what seems to give music a particular fizz is really a lot of deliberate mess, and you can reach a kind of zen with your appreciation of the sample rates and bit rates that we're using in an Amiga. Same way as people cling onto vinyl. I cling onto cassette. I love it, but this is something of its own for me, and I will never not be happy to hear a complex sample run through the Amiga mangle, because always cheers me up. So some of these behave better than others, but you can always go and tweak your source if you have access to the source, if it's a synthy one or something like that. Having said that, it's fun to work within limitations. Fun of sample digging is finding something that is what it is, and then do what you can with it. And I think we've got a lot of material here for me to do another session on proper liquid, deep jungle. You know what? That must be a really high. No, that looks pretty big. So I think, I can't be sure because I'm not sure if these file names are overflowing. I think that's 98K, that sample, which is enormous and wouldn't load in most versions of Protracker. I'm excited going to see Come Trues this Thursday at FM84 in a few weeks. Awesome, two great electronic musicians. Yes, indeed. I have albums and stuff by both of them. If you get a chance to see Machine Drum, check out Machine Drum as well. I was listening to him way back on Merc. And there were a lot of old demo scene people releasing on Merc at the time, which is probably how I got into that. But I didn't hear much from Machine Drum for a while, and then he started performing and touring again a couple of years ago. Worth checking out as well. Yeah, so that's I'm pretty chuffed with the socks recipe, like I said, and I tried a few different ways of ordering the chain. So when the sample reduction actually gets done. Is it before or after normalization? It's actually got 2 normalization stages in there, which is I think kind of necessary. If you disagree, that's fine. You can dig into my code, which is open and shared on GitHub. You can, and in fact, I've documented what I've done with the string that I passed to socks on the command line in the background. If you want to change that or experiment or do your own, give it a shot. If you're au fait with the command line, that's a good thing to try. Hoffman has done a Windows drag and drop batch converter. Does a similar sort of thing to AmigaPal. AmigaPal will run on Windows. It might run on Linux, but you'll have to compile it yourself. I don't think I can produce a Linux executable. Maybe I can, but I can't package it for release or some nonsense. Anyway, nobody's come screaming for a Linux version of it yet, but if they do, I'll get it figured out. So yeah, I can't wait to get stuck into some of these. Oh, that's a good one. So yeah, let's get some of that chopped out just for the crack. So so if we cut that out there, do a crossfade, raise the whole volume a bit more. I probably should have maximized it just to be sure. That should loop reasonably well without us having to do much. Yeah, that's a decent loop point. Yeah, Hoffman's been doing PT210 with Akira for a while. He got sick of Akira demanding MIDI sync on everything, and said, "Yeah, okay, I'll do it." Which, yeah, I mean, Akira and I for many years were both trying to find somebody who would either a combination of other trackers that would let us sync, or somebody who would hack an old version. And a lot of people were reluctant, especially if you've seen the state of some of the old Protracking code before it was tidied up. I mean, even with my limited assembly understanding, I can tell it's a mess. They were a mess. They were done over years collaboratively by teenagers and eventually slightly older people, and I love that it's all a mess, but it means that you can't just easily turn on MIDI. I mean, there's an option, and I'll show you, there's an option in here for MIDI, but it doesn't do anything. I think if you look in the code, there's a point where it would open the parallel, the serial library, and it doesn't, so that's it. There's no MIDI. So we were talking about that at Blipfest 08, I think. I guess we're both using Amiga. No, I don't know if he was playing that one. He'd played, I don't know. I was using Amiga on stage. I think I was the only person using Amiga at the time. I took an Amiga 600 with no disk drive. No, I did take a disk drive because he and I were running the floppy swap chop shop, where anybody in, I guess, the tri-state area, or anybody who'd come to Blip, we made it known that we would fix them up with a boot floppy with compact flash drivers on. This is in 2008. Freezing cold, 2008. And we the idea was you could bring along an Amiga floppy, an 80K DD floppy, and we would put the compact flash drivers on so that you could go away, get PCMCIA to compact flash adapter, which I always whip out when I say that because it's right here, and I like it. It's a nice thing. We wanted to make it easy for people to get going with that. So I think what actually happened is we both got really drunk, and I don't remember much more, but that was a good show. yeah, I haven't seen Akira since. I've seen Hoffman at a few parties, a few Sundowns, and a few, was he at? Who was at Little Computer People in Malmo? Oh god, right, I'll stop because I'm just going on a demo scene nostalgia trip. Not even that long ago. Well, it doesn't feel like long ago, but it is. It's like I'm old. It's like 10 years. But there you go. So yeah. Oh man, that sounds lovely. I don't know how lovely it sounds over the stream, but again, I don't care. It's well, it looks like something has overflowed into pattern data. Let's see if I can clear that. Song. Still got the sample. Yeah, either I loaded a sample that wasn't length checked, or it was when I tried to do something earlier on that didn't work. Oh, I know what I did. I think I loaded a sample as a pattern, and it just went, meh, I'm confused. I'm going to throw this data all over the pattern table. So hey, we're fixed now. But we're not really actually doing anything. I just wanted to demonstrate that it's, once you've done that conversion, and even if you don't plan to use 128 or 127K sample, the fact that you can load one in means that you've got more options for, as ever, you know, if you're loading a sample that you want to do some serious work on, as I have said numerous times, load it in before you do anything else. Range all, make a copy, dump it in a new spare slot. Even if you have to open a second module, even if you run out of slots, open a second module, do all the work you need to do. Save often, work on a copy, always cut to buffer, which is an option in setup. It's not always on by default. Cut to buff on, have that on. If you don't, then cut just disappears it into thin air. And usually we today, this day and age, expect cut will put something in a copy buffer, so that's what it does. But still, work on a copy, and you've always got some backup, unless you've just got it in the thing. But you know, might copy a few stages along the way, so you can always kind of get an undo step. There is pattern data undo in here, but no sample editing undo. As you'll know if you've ever accidentally done filter all samples, which happens without confirmation prompt or anything. C-Trix stroke, but Fast 2. Yeah, our paths had never crossed actually, C-Trix and I. We just missed each other a few times. I think we missed each other in London by not very long. No Sleep came over, and Minus Baby came over, and we did a gig in London. That went horribly wrong at the end. We got attacked by a gang. We had to run away. We ran away. One of them punched somebody, and another one was going for a knife. We just fucking ran. That was crazy. And yeah, well, I won't go into details, but that was mad. Gwem played that gig. I was thinking about that gig this morning because I was in the coffee shop and Althea and Donna, Uptown Top Ranking, came on, which is a fantastic tune. And I remembered that at that show, I did my AHX cover of that, which is AHX and the Roland SH-101 that I usually play live, or used to play live, and NE7 of Triad, Andy, who lives in that neck of the woods and came to the gig and is the best person, came, grabbed the mic, sang in, which is brilliant because it's amazing when Althea and Donna sing it. It's almost as amazing when NE7 of Triad sings it. Different vibe, but same spirit. I'm just trying to see if I've got it on here. 2014, it was a lot longer ago than that. Dear me. God almighty. It's probably on here somewhere. Where are all the, oh, the directories are all at the bottom. Where would I put this? I wouldn't put it there. I'd put it in something that said like tonight's gig or something. 2014, well, that's not that helpful really, is it? Yeah, somewhere. But AmigaPal, yes, I do location sound recording for film and TV. And yeah, and that's why I've got a relatively decent mic. It's having a MacBook fan blowing at it pretty loudly, and I'm doing some pretty intense side chaining, and there's some nasty filters and OBS I've got running that I'm not too happy with. But yeah, that's one of my day jobs, and it's good. Gets me out of the house, get to meet people. But briefly, which is sometimes a nice way to meet new people, just for the day or for a few hours. Yeah, I can't find that tune. Anyway, it's a cover I did of that, and I'll dig it out and play it sometime. Maybe happy that Andy sang it, and that was when the gig was still going well. Rhys Shearsmith came in and watched, but Rhys Shearsmith is from the League of Gentlemen, but I think he wanted him by mistake, and he was supposed to be upstairs, so he left. But he stayed for a few tunes, and AmigaPal, is that the kind of work you do? What are we in similar industries there? I'm going to close AHX rather than tantalize you with no AHX tunes ready to go. Hi again. I should get rid of some of these. Oh, one of these days I'll do a session on Musicline. Musicline is crazy. It's ridiculous how powerful Musicline is. And oh, you're a DOP. Cool. Bill, yes, I do commercials and documentaries. I've a few shows on Netflix now. Nice one. Awesome. So yeah, I work. I've been doing audio of one kind or another forever. And a friend of mine was a camera op, and I was a DOP. He's a fantastic DOP, and he's terrible at audio, and I've fixed so many bodge jobs for him. I'd got him out of so many scrapes. Eventually I said, he's like, I'll buy the kit, I'll do this. Like, I don't trust you ever to set up a microphone ever again. I want you not to have to worry about it. If you can convince clients that they need to have decent quality sound, which they do, then we'll do this. And I spent a few years getting experienced at boom handling and stuff like that, but really skills you've learned doing live sound, doing sound design, game audio production, all those kinds of things, you can transliterate that common sense from one thing to another. So knowing how mic axes work and where to point it and how not to get handling noise and all that kind of stuff, like, I'm not saying it doesn't require experience and skill, but if you've got a head start like I did, I think it gets you to a higher quality a bit quicker. So yeah, we got a good amount of work, and people in the area and beyond are starting to get to grips with the idea that the audio needs to be good, because, I mean, it will ruin your stuff. It will ruin your advert. It will ruin even your Instagram video if the sounds, if it's bad enough to be bad on a phone, and often it is, then that can kill it, no matter how much you spent on the visuals. Equally, like, you know, it's my job to keep the boom out of shot. So it's a nice partnership, the two of us, and we also have a Steadicam op based locally, who, he's amazing. He's absolutely amazing. He's about 20, but he just has so much experience despite being so young. He's worked every day he's been able to. He's saved up, got a fantastic Steadicam rig, and we're using him as much as we can before he ends up on features, on feature films, because that's where he's going, I'm sure. So we're just getting the most out of him while he's still here. So yeah, that keeps things interesting. And the game I'm working on is having a bit of a slow patch in development at the minute. Well, but it's good to have multiple irons in the fire and streams of income and things like that. I'm just about surviving between them. Yeah, music line editor. One day I'll go in and learn it better, and then we'll do a session on it, because it is ridiculous how powerful music line editor is. Yeah, yeah, just crazy. And it will do 8 channels, with all the caveats that usually come with 8 channel on the Amiga, software mixing, in other words. But some people in Uprough have done, Quan, I think it was Quan, did some amazing music line editor tunes at Little Computer People a few years ago. And yeah, it doesn't get talked about much. I don't know how much it gets used now. Does music line have synthesis? I believe so, and I can't remember exactly how it works, but let's see if I can. I don't even remember how to change the instrument editor. It's on the tilt. There we go. Yeah, and it will do kind of give you filter parameters and a whole bunch of stuff, and I think it will bounce those to a waveform. I don't think it's running any of that live, but I'm not sure. I was going to do a session on Star Tracker a few weeks ago, but it just no, life's too short. That does have MIDI. You can sync that, but I mean, if what you need is MIDI, you should be using Octamed anyway. Star Trek is crazy, and anybody who did tunes on that, I have nothing but admiration for them. But Melon Tracker, have I run Melon Tracker on this stream yet? I love Melon Tracker, partly because I love customizing Protracker interface. I think it's a version of Protracker 2.1, maybe. Star Tracker was a Fairlight release, yeah, way back, yeah, it's crackers. It does 8 channels. It has the one thing. I think it got used for this more than for actually writing tunes. AM and FM synthesis built in, so you could generate some nice samples in there, save them out, and then load up a tracker that actually did what you expected it to do when you press buttons. Didn't just go and mystify you. I haven't managed to find any documentation for it in all these years. I don't know if it ever came with any. Yeah, what I love about this is Melon Design had their own custom Protracker. It's just a bit of hacking, but this is quite a tasty bit of hacking. The fade in on the pattern data, it's actually not that practical. It's nice to be able to see clearly what is above and below your current row, but it looks awesome, like a circular drum piano roll, and yeah, it's a nice thing. Here we go, by Crayon Obnoxious. So Crayon was one of the many Protracker devs, and must have owed Melon a favor for some reason. Who knows? Melon work in mysterious ways. Always have. Yep. Yeah, really gonna wind it up now. Thank you for watching, and it's been even more of a ramble, disorganized shambles than usual. I mean, I talked about what wanted to talk about. Some stuff I didn't get a chance to talk about. I'll try and remember what it was and come back to it. And now that I'm back into the swing of things, we'll get back into more structured themes, like I keep threatening to do a Dusk Pop episode. I will. We'll do some more chiptunes. House. I want to do some house, maybe some techno. That would be fun. Not least because it's a good way of showing AmigaPal. Glad I cut you soon. Thank you very much. Thank you. I will catch up with you soon. I will see. I'm not always around when you're streaming. I will endeavour to be. I will get the kids to bed or to put them in a kennel or something, get rid of them so I can concentrate on some other people's streams for a change. Rob Softgrade 2, thank you very much. Thank you, Artstate. Thank you, everybody. And yeah, I'll kill it there, I think, and see you all soon. Cheers. Bye-bye.